Well, Latin America is can today lead the developing world, I would say, in the adoption of rule of law and democracy. It's true it's not happening in every single country in Latin America, but in general, if you look at the last 20 years in Latin America, there's been every year more democracy, more participation, more market participation, and greater education, a larger middle class. So these trends are good. I think, however, in Latin America, we're frustrated in terms that the trends aren't faster. So, we have to look at, if we look at a longer term, it's been sort of steady progress. It just hasn't been sufficient progress. But for the rest of the world, if you look at Southeast Asia, if you look at the Middle East, if you look at Africa, Latin America has a lot of good things that they would like to copy. As a CEO, I think always the most difficult decision is to let people go. Unless you, have some, personality disorders, it's always very painful to let people go. On the other hand, to run an efficient company, those decisions have to be made sometimes. There are people who are poor performers, and sometimes there are people who are actually good performers, but what they work in is no longer relevant to your business plan. You have to be able to step outside of the personal feelings and make the decision that is the right one for the company in the long term, and that can be very difficult in the short term. Well, I think in my experience, it is in almost all cases been good for both in the long term. If that person doesn't fit into the organization today, keeping them on will make them in the long term unhappy. And it also will demoralize the other workers in the company. So in almost all cases that I have seen of people who weren't fired, for a reason. Like if somebody misbehaves, that is not such a difficult decision to take. That can be quite easy. But what is very difficult is to take a decision to dismiss somebody for reasons other than poor performance. What do we look for in a leader? I think that's a great question, because there's a difference between being a leader and being a boss. It's easy to be a boss. You just basically use your authority, and you can intimidate, or people just respect the position. Being a leader is actually influencing the way people think and getting them to do the right thing because you have convinced them it's the best thing for the company and it's something that excites them. So nowadays we need more leaders and less bosses.